moved from Wyoming, I have like, and I didn't even realize this until I actually quit turning wrenches here and brought all my shit home. I have 4 fucking toolboxes, and I have so many fucking parts and shit. Like, I got like control units and fucking all kinds of dumb shit that I've kept over the years.
Like my microphone stand at the moment is it's actually a whole 3408 camshaft, but this is the end gear off of one, and it passed the reusability, and the customer was like, nah, just throw a new one on. Okay, then I'm taking this home.
Yep. As a mechanic would. Yep, this is mine now. I'm keeping it. You know how much junk we keep? Pistons, gears, all kinds of stupid shit. The only thing that I'm proud of myself for doing is I a long time ago, I gave up on the bolt bucket concept, and I got really fucking tired of every time I needed a bolt having to dump the entire 5-gallon bucket out to fucking sift through all the bolts. So I told myself, I'm like, Melissa, we're going to buy some organizers. We're going to put it in your toolbox. And if it doesn't fucking fit, throw it away. Or swap it out with a bolt that looks shittier and throw that one away. Or something, right? Besides collecting a 5-gallon bucket full of goddamn bolts. And, well, I mean, it was in one of my side, because I have a snap-on triple bay. So it has, like, the bigger ones, and then it has the littler ones. Yeah. And I did have it in one of the littler ones. And that's now graduated to the entire bottom drawer of my tool cart. But they're all organized, so that's what counts. I know what I have.
That's what really counts. You're not kidding. Because there's been times when somebody's been like, oh yeah, I have one in my toolbox, and you follow them over there, and they're like struggling to open the drawer or something because it's just a fucking wreck. And when that happens, you're just like, I don't think I want to sift through this, dude. I'll just order it.
This is gonna take me longer to look through this than it is. Yeah.
I'll just fucking order it, and we'll put it on new, because even if you have one in there, for one, it's gonna take 10 minutes to fucking find it. But for two, who knows if it's any good anymore? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Now, connectors, that's the hard one for me. So I found that where there was actually a story I did a while ago, and a lot of people fucking loved it, but I was doing something fucking simple too. It was a window wash motor off the washer reservoir, and the connector updated to a Deutz style connector, just a 2-pin Deutz, and it was that old school, I can't remember the name of it, but they're the white square body style connectors.
I know,
no insulation whatsoever. But I remember, like, I made a story on that, and I'd cut it off and put on a new Deutz, not a big deal, and I was like going to throw it away, and I was like, I'm going to keep it, but no, just throw it away. It's fine. I can find it again. Not a big deal. Like, what I've actually found that I've done, though, is if I come into situations like that and I do happen to have a part number, I've on my work phone, I have a subfolder of just part number pictures. So I can be like, okay, I have a picture of this now. I can order it again if need be. But I'll tell you what,
I've done the same thing with connectors. I started collecting connectors and bulkheads, and I don't know if you've ever worked on like paving equipment or mill equipment and shit like that, but their teeth and some of their parts and shit and stuff come in these little gray boxes that are like this big, like plastic tote thingies, which I fucking love. I got like 10 of those things. And I started filling them with connectors, and I actually got so many connectors I had to split it up into bulkheads and connectors. And like my connector box is so full that like I go to close the lid and it's like damn near gonna fucking break the lid off because I have so many. Because every time we would have a wiring harness that would fail, I would go through like a fucking mechanic would, and if it's not under warranty, or if it was, I would sit there and wait until they didn't ask for it back, right? And then you go and cut off all the connectors and keep them. And I use that shit for all kinds of stuff, mainly for like tools. Like, you know how nice it is to like get one of those little connectors and put really long wires on it so you can use it for testing and stuff like that. I love those things, but I collect so many of those.
Yeah, the bypass harnesses I've actually built a number of those using those old school connector, like just like you're saying. If they don't ask for it back, if warranty doesn't want it, if somebody's throwing it away, it's not a warranty job or whatever, and you just cut all the connector ends off. Our chassis shop at the main store, I'm sure all the other branch stores have the same thing. They have a bunch of e-containers full of old harnesses just because they're like, well, shit, we might need this connector at some point, and they got it stashed somewhere.
Well, when
I
you're
don't
in
know.
a
I've never.
pinch, like
Well,
that's the
yeah,
thought that every mechanic goes through, right? They're like, I might need this one day,
yeah, and
and then
we
it's
all
like
got
turns
kind
into a
of
room full of shit.
we all got kind of validated during the initial start of the whole supply chain crisis
Yep,
because there
during
was a lot
COVID.
of times, hey, I've got that in my box. I can get this thing up and running instead of waiting for 10 days or a week or however long the lead time is because nobody has one.
You know how much new shit I have because of that? Because the customer, because we would always give the customer options, right? They're like, hey,
oh yeah,
I can get this running right now. I'm going to use an old thing that we've got. I'm going to order one to replace it. So we can either replace it when we get the new one or, whatever.
just
And the
run the old
customer's
one.
like, I don't fucking care. I need this going. When you get the new part, come and replace it. And then you call them when you get the new part and they're like, no, it's fine. You're like,
Yeah,
that's
it
going
hasn't
in my
broken yet. Keep
toolbox.
going. Yeah. No, that's something that I've
Yep.
seen on a couple of machines by now where it's like, hey, I've got this on the truck. It's not exactly brand new, but like Cat has, it's called the ARD after treatment regeneration device system. It is a very stupidly over-engineered regen system. I really hate it, but one of the things that they do is they have, solenoids, and they have a fuel manifold and all this extra shit. Well, there's been times where it's like I have a known good spark plug, um, but it's from a used machine. I can put it in here for testing purposes, and you run the test. You call the customer, and you're like, hey, I passed the test. This is what it was. I've got one on order, and they're like, oh, is it running? Yeah. Okay, well, get it back to work. Okay, I mean, when do you want us to come back out? And it's like, well, we'll worry about that later. And job gets closed. Nobody cares. And you look on the machine later and it's still running. It's fine. No issues. And it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead. Like you're saying, this is mine now. Thank you for the brand new one in exchange for the one that had like 10 hours on it or whatever. So thanks.
Yep. People that are not mechanics do not understand how much shit we hoard.
Yeah,
like we put Hoarders, that TV show Hoarders, some of us put them to shame with how much shit we keep. Or like the worst part is when you have a service manager for the shop or a shop manager that believes in keeping everything, because then you don't just have toolboxes and like little boxes next to your toolboxes full of shit. You've got an entire goddamn room dedicated to shit. That like we had that in fucking Commerce City, like the wire harness thing. We had an entire upstairs part of like over the wash bay that was full of warranty parts that ended up being good, or wiring harnesses or whatever, full of shit. And when I'm saying it had wiring harnesses, it didn't just have a couple. It had like 10 years worth of fucking goddamn wiring harnesses in this room. But if you needed a connector, there's no fucking way you're not going to find it, because there's like 10 years worth of fucking harnesses up there. But
that was the way it was. I mean, some of it's a matter of survival too. So for power systems, the one thing that we ran into a lot was you would get third-party parts. So the way that Caterpillar has their business model set up as far as product support goes is you have your earth moving, and that handles anything earth moving, right? Anything from a skid steer to large, like I think it's like a 374, maybe like a 394, something like that. And I'm pretty sure it goes to mining at that point. Like there's a certain level that it goes to mining. Like obviously you're not going to give somebody who deals like a product support salesman who deals with, light stuff, skid steers, telehandlers and all that shit. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, there's a customer with a 994 that needs like, you probably wouldn't even know where to begin, right? So but we in power systems dealt with everything that wasn't paving, earth moving, or machining, as far as like machine shop, because we had our own machine shop. So anything industrial that Cat made, anything. So we worked on a lot of crushers, worked on a lot of snowcats, worked on a lot of like, there was the clothing brand Cool, Kuhl. They have like a mock Unimog, and it's like a Chevy built Unimog, whatever. Well, that thing had a freaking Cat C7 in it, or I think it was like a 3126. But they brought it in and needed an oil pan gasket replaced on it because it was leaking, or like that's the one thing I do miss is because you get random shit that you had no idea.
Yeah.
Like I know more about hydrovac trucks than I ever wanted to. Granted, it was a cat built chassis.
Fucking hate those things.
But oh yeah, I absolutely, it was like the worst thing ever. I learned about like not boiler systems, water heater systems. It's like, dude, this is hotter than any water heater I've ever seen in my life. It's basically a boiler, but they can't say trucks, it's a boiler. But
water pump trucks, all those fuck that. Because in John Deere we had to work on those too. Because they'd have John Deere power units in those too, and it's like I don't want to work on that.
Oh no, yeah, and I mean those part stashes and all that shit, they save your bacon.
Oh
they
yeah,
really do.
Well, that's the problem. That's the cycle you get into, is like you start saving shit and you're like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should throw this away, and then something saves you and they're like, I'm definitely gonna keep saving shit, and then that just turns into this giant cycle of like, now I got a bunch of shit.
No shit, right?
I've got like a Dodge junkyard full of shit for my trucks. Like I think every mechanic is like that though.
Everybody is. But, you're not wrong.
I know you wanted to talk about the like not being typical people that get into the industry and like trying to like encourage people that aren't the typical mechanic, that you don't have to be some big burly motherfucker or whatever people stereotype mechanics as to be in this industry. I mean, I've worked with a lot of mechanics in my time. I've worked in a bunch of shops, and
being a non-typical guy, like for those who don't know me, who aren't familiar, I weigh $135. Like I'm not a big dude.
Damn, I weigh more than you.
Well, yeah, like I've lost a lot of weight, but that's been a lot of stress. At my peak, I have only ever weighed about 155, and that was like that was it, dude. I was doing everything I could to gain weight, literally every single thing. Just couldn't.
That.
So I don't know. Life stress, everything kind of takes its toll, and before long, it's like I haven't even tried. I haven't tried to gain or try to lose or anything like that. So 135 is about where I'm at. Like that's it. Which is funny because when I shipped for boot camp, I weighed. Okay, so when I depped delayed entry program DEP, when I depped in, I weighed 103 pounds.
Damn.
And I got a waiver to DEP in, and they're like, all right, well, you're gonna run, like, you do your PT, all that stuff. Like I was skinny, man, dangerously skinny. So when I went to ship, my ship date was coming up. They weighed me at MEPS, and they're like, I don't think you'll even meet the waiver spec. And I was, from a rural area, so my recruiter really needed freaking numbers, and he was like, well, shit, hold on. And so he like runs into the cafeteria area, comes back with a gallon full of water, and he goes, drink as much of this as you can. Like literally drinking
just for water weight,
as much as I could. And like it barely got me at the bare minimum. I weighed 114 when I shipped out. And that was like 114 and I'm about to throw up water kind of thing. Like and I didn't even gain that much in boot camp. I graduated at 132. So
well, you probably have a metabolism like mine, where it's like you could smash Oreos for every single meal and you're not going to fucking gain anything.
Oh yeah. Like I don't gain weight. And I mean, like there's people who they could look at a beer the wrong way and they put 5 pounds on, and it's like, oh shit, that sucks, dude. But it's like, I can mix amazing drinks. I can drink a whole freaking a keg worth of beer, a mini keg, and I'll be fine. Like as far as weight gain, I'll probably be dead. But anyway,
you'll not be fine, but you'll be fine. You'll be skinny, but you might be dead.
Oh yeah, I'll be a skinny dead. But anyway, getting back to it, like I'm not the typical guy that people associate with mechanics. Like you're saying, most people think about the mechanic and they think, Ricky Bobby from church or whatever, who's fucking 6'5" and weighs 250 and he's got hands that he can just grab your whole face with. Like, no, there are guys like that. Absolutely. I've worked with a lot of guys like that. But
and then they ask you for help because they can't reach into half of the places because they're fucking so big.
That's my favorite. They're like breaking shit in a dash. I'm like, motherfucker. And it's like, just let me help you out, dude. Like,
you need some finesse there, homie.
There's a lot of that, but there's also the fact that, I mean, keep in mind at this point, on this point in particular, I am speaking from my own experience. So a lot of people might disagree with this, but you got to understand, in shops, there's kind of a shop mentality, even in the field. In this trade, there is a specific kind of trade mentality that goes with it. There is expectations, you got to be thick skinned. There's a lot to it, but at the same time, if you go into these kind of environments, it's a lot more different as far as you can just keep your head down and work. There's people who might fuck with you or whatever. Like there's kind of a niche for everybody. You can make it work. So being the smaller guy, being the more introverted guy, granted, it's not like, I go to work and I'm just having a blast and I'm outgoing and all that, whatever, but there's people pick up on one another in a shop in particular because you have to rely on one another. So getting to it and
it's an atmosphere.
It is absolutely an atmosphere. But the thing is it's not what you expect. There is a lot of that. Sure, there's a lot of people who are just talking mad shit. There's a lot of people who are just starting the
there's always the loudmouths, right?
There's stereotypes for sure. And like I said, working at the Volvo dealer, I saw a lot of that and I participated in some of it because it's fun, Guy's not looking, you fill his exhaust on his impact with lubricate 101, like whatever. You do shit like that. But at the same time, it's like if you don't want to get fucked with, you just make it known, be like, hey, fuck off, kind of thing. And
I've mentioned that a couple of times in my podcast that like the shop atmosphere is a big deal, right? Like the shop atmosphere can make or break the success of that shop. And if you have a bunch of shit attitudes, especially if the shit attitude is coming from the boss or the foreman or someone in a lead position, like there's a big difference between being quiet and reserved and kind of keeping to yourself and just having a shit fucking attitude.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with, honestly, most of the mechanics that I've worked with that are good mechanics are more introverted. Like they might joke with you here and there and they might like have fun here and there, but for the most part, they do exactly what you just said. They put their head down and they work. And that's
there's a degree of camaraderie that's associated with it too. If you're introverted, in my experience at least, for the most part, you might get fucked with a little at first, but if you're just fucking there to work, you're there to work.
Yeah.
People generally
you're gonna
fuck with
get a lot more respect. Everybody in a shop has, everybody fucks with everybody at some point in time, right?
Oh yeah.
Or everybody has fun, or everybody shit talks here and there, but you just get that one loudmouth, and usually it's somebody that's not even that good of a mechanic, right? They are a loudmouth and just annoying all the time, and just are constantly boasting about how amazing they are, even though they're probably the worst numbers in the shop. Like that shit's annoying. And if you have like a bunch of people in your shop that do that, then it makes the people who are actually there to work way less wanting to put in their best.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's funny. It's hard to explain to people because it's not. I guess I've never worked in another industry before, but I've quit shops before for that reason, because of the atmosphere in the shop.
So going back to not being the typical what you expect is, again, there's a lot of that where people just expect us to be a bunch of loudmouth assholes to each other, and we're not trying, we're not like thinking about anybody else. There's no room to fit. You're either part of the crew or you're rejected or whatever. But I mean, that is a bit of a mentality in some shops, but it's not every single shop, so there's and there's a wide variety of things of different people in this trade. Again, I speak as being introverted, as being the guy who's not the first to, start playing games, whatever, who's being the guy who's more about like, I like to be a little bit more professional than most people. But I mean, and even just talking to people, it's not really my thing talking, which I mean, amusing, I'm on a podcast, but I look at this as an opportunity to come out and say, like, look, even if you feel like, if you are mechanically inclined, if you're like me, you played with Legos a lot growing up, you kind of built your own world, whatever, you wanted to know how things worked, you took shit apart, you put it together. Like I grew up, every time I buy a new or get a new firearm or whatever, or even my dad, if he'd buy a gun or whatever, I would always like, first thing I would do is field strip it just to see how it worked. I'd take it all the way down. Granted, I have the manual that tells you how to fucking do it because it's a brand new gun, but it was that kind of mentality. It was the kind of like, I didn't grow up where most people that every single podcast I listen to, almost every single time the people are like, my grandfather or my dad or my cousin or my brother, somehow they were involved in it. They already knew about it. They already knew everything to do. Like they understood a degree of this trade. I didn't know shit. Like I talk about, and one of my posts I wrote a while back, I changed, and it's funny, it was actually, I was kind of brushing up on your podcast, and I listened to the one episode with the gal who said she changed her alternator and shocked the hell out of herself, right? Like I did the same thing. Like I thought I was all badass, and my dad was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't know. You can figure it out on this car we just bought for you." It was my Nissan or my Ford Aspire got freaking totaled, and so we used the insurance money to buy a shitty Nissan Pathfinder. But it anyway, getting sidetracked here. I was changing the starter on it because it was doing the click, right? Like it was, you could hear the solenoid engage, and my dad had asked the mechanic shop about it, and they were like, just change the starter, right? So I didn't know you had to take the batteries off. I had no idea. So I'm reaching in this dark engine bay with a wrench, trying to, and just sparks and shit. I'm going, what the fuck? Like, I have no idea. I still didn't change. I didn't disconnect the battery. I changed the rest of it without disconnecting the battery. I had no, really stupid. But again, that speaks to the fact that I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I knew nothing about this trade. So getting into it and kind of realizing like, this is actually kind of fun. I had a little bit of direction when I went to MEPS and did the ASVAB, sure, but I didn't understand it. Like even when I went to my unit after all the schooling I'd been through, I went to my unit and they were like, hey, go do this, go do that, whatever. Like there was a lot of OJT. I found myself reading the books a lot, which I guess nobody else really did, because in short order, they were like, cool, you're fucking smart. You're going to be a work center supervisor as an E3, which is an E6 billet, which is 3 different pay grades above. So you're going to be a work center supervisor. You can't do any quality assurance stuff yet. So anything you have to do, this dude has to sign off on. So like I right away, like I actually didn't turn wrenches that long as in the Marine Corps. I ended up being more admin side kind of shit. And I saw I was only getting more involved in the admin side. So that was also part of the reason why I was leaving. Because I was like, this is fucking taking years off my life. Like this sucks. I don't want to do this. I want to go do something that's not that bad. And so I guess it's kind of not as bad. I end up finding in the field, you still do a lot of admin shit. At least for CAT, you do a lot of admin shit. But where was I? Getting back to it, it's like and I love to stress that point, because people look at me and they're like, oh, you must come from a lineage of mechanics. Like you're so mechanically inclined. Like where is it? And it's like my dad loves to say he's a mechanical idiot, and that's it. Like nobody in the nearest thing is my grandfather was a civil engineer for Caltrans. That was it. That is the nearest thing. Nobody else in my lineage had any kind of job like this. So to be a wrench turner, to get into it, to realize like, hey, I'm having fun doing this, when
and it pays really quickly, and it's not like just some dirty, shitty job. Like, most people that don't know the industry think.
And there's satisfaction in it. That's the thing. I learned really quickly just tinkering on shit. So I grew up near a skate park, and my parents wouldn't buy me a skateboard. For some reason, I don't remember how, I got a scooter, like one of those Razor fold-up scooters, and scooters and rollerblades. And I started changing like wheel bearings and skateboards and stuff like that. Like it was weird. I got involved in that stuff and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I could tell you like, oh, you need ABEC 9 rollerblades because they've got 9 roller balls in the bearings, so they roll smoother and it's so much better and faster than your ABEC 5s and all this stuff. Like I was like the neighborhood rollerblade scooter whatever mechanic
nerd
guy like, and I'm in there in my dad's garage with his like 5 tools and a bottle of WD-40 and just like fucking around. Like I had no idea what I was doing. Looking back, it's like I couldn't have really hurt anything, but it's not something that I ever would have expected to grow into where I'm at now, where it's like I just got finished putting together a 972G and rebuilding a fuel pump governor. That's something that
you guys still do that shit.
It's so the thing is like there's still these old mechanical systems out there, and being a dealer, we do full product support. So again, we have our weld shop, we have our component rebuild center, we have all our different shops for different like parts of the machine and product support. And in the CRC, there's a guy who does fuel pumps. That's all he does.
I forgot the CAT dealership. So do you guys have those in-house rebuild people within the same building?
Yeah.
Because I know that like in Denver, Colorado, they have the same thing where they have the cat shop and it's got all those fucking other little things connected to it. But if you go to like this is actually part of the reason I did not start working at Cat in Cheyenne was the cat dealership there. You could not do any component rebuilds. You couldn't rebuild engines. You couldn't do axles. You couldn't do cylinders. You couldn't. Well, I guess cylinders. I think you might, because I had to take a couple cylinders over there and have them break the nuts loose for me. Because
interesting.
Horrible.
No, they're torqued to really high spec.
But well, they were fucking big, and we didn't have a fucking hydraulic wheel at the point in time. No, they're like we have like benches. We had like a bench where you would
pin like a cylinder rebuild bench.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I've seen those.
Yeah, where like pin the rod and then you can use a hydraulic cylinder to undo the nut and then do it. Yeah, we didn't have one of those yet. We ended up getting one, but we didn't have one at the time.
Yeah, so the way Wheeler's set up, the chassis shop, there's a main aisleway and a roll-up door, and then there's your teardown for the component rebuild center. And then it goes into horseshoe, and then there's another roll-up door where their rebuilt components go out. So like literally you can take a machine for certified, and the way their Cat's trying to do it is they want to have round-the-clock coverage. So granted, you might not be the guy who puts the thing back together, but it's supposed to be standardized. So you'll get a machine
like an assembly line.
Essentially, it's all like there's a checklist, there's a procedure for every, like there is. Cat is very, very thorough with their product support as far as literature goes and information goes. It's all out there. That's the only reason why I felt comfortable making the jump to earth moving field in particular with having almost no experience. But going like they'll take the machine there. In theory, this is the way it works. Bring it in. I want a certified, powertrain plus hydraulics, whatever. Cool. Strip the machine down to the frame or whatever level you want to go. All the different components get scattered. We have a cylinder shop. They'll take every cylinder, tear them all down, inspect them. If they pass spec, fix whatever needs to be fixed, rebuild them, test them, certify them, take them back to the machine. Same with your engine, your powertrain, your axles, everything. It all gets taken into the CRC. It gets scootered across that aisleway into the blast booth, and they blast it and they tear it all the way down. They send it over to the rebuild side and they rebuild it from the ground up. And then we have a transmission dyno. We have 2 engine dynos. Yeah. We are one of the only Cat dealers around that has a dyno that can do 3,600 engines. Like that's the biggest Cat engine out there. And they're like taller than they're really
what liter is
huge.
That?
I don't know off the top of my head. So they have all the way up to like I think it's a 3616. But the pistons themselves are like 16 inches across in diameter. Like,
damn, that'd be cool as fuck though. Like train engines and shit like that.
Oh, they're bigger than trains. Train engines
really?
are like a 3500 series roughly, or like a C175 series, something like that, which is like a common rail 35. But like Caterpillar considers everything up to it's like 5.5 inches in piston diameter a medium bore engine. After that, it goes to large bore engines. So you over the road truck engines, C15, 3406, same thing. They're all considered medium bore engines by Cat. And their small bore engines are like, the 4.4s, or I think their 6.6 is actually where their medium bore starts. But so anyway, getting back to it, that's what they do. They'll horseshoe it and they'll send it back out. And by then the frame's been inspected, it's been repaired, it's been painted, harnesses have been tested and repaired and reinstalled or whatever. And so they'll start bolting it back together and send it out the door after QC and take it back. They'll drive it over to a paint shop. They'll paint the entire thing, make it nice and pretty. They'll decal it up, send it to the customer again. And it's basically a rebirth of a machine.
John Deere has relife programs too, but it's not like that at all. I mean, you are repainting it and putting all new components in, either replacing or rebuilding all the components and shit like that. But it's usually just like 1 or 2 mechanics on it, which I think that's a double-edged sword, right? Because the way Cat does it's probably a lot faster.
Yeah, it is.
But the way John Deere does it, like personally as a mechanic, I fucking hate picking up somebody else's job. I fucking hate trying to figure out where all their bolts are, because even if they're a good mechanic, your brains don't think the same, right?
Exactly.
So it's hard to like pick up jobs. So I would fucking hate having to like pick up a job where somebody else left it off and like not be like the person like directly involved. To me, that would drive me crazy.
So I know it's a little different in the chassis shop itself, but I know in the CRC, they literally have a standardized procedure. It's basically developed in-house, but everything from the bolt bins that you use for certain bolts for that engine, everything, or that transmission, like it all has a designated space. It all has a designated spot. It all has a designated like point that it goes to in the bay that you're building it. Like it is all standardized. And then when you build it, like you can start building it and they'll be like, oh shit, this other job shit hot. Go over there, finish that one. And some other dude will step in and finish building it. Like I look at it as, again, a double-edged sword because things happen faster, you get better product support. But some of the drawbacks to that, in my opinion, are you don't get the satisfaction of starting a project and finishing it. That's one thing I loved about Power Systems is we did everything ourselves. Like I rebuilt 3408 engines a lot. So I was the guy who took the pictures, tore it down, cleaned it, inspected it, ordered all my parts, put it all together. The only thing I didn't do was dyno it or paint it. I didn't really want to paint it. I kind of wanted to run the dyno, but the guy who runs the dyno is one of those kind of guys that's like, he only lets people who are like, you have to be chill with him if he will, if he, or a manager has to say, hey, have him run the dyno, like show him how to do it kind of thing. He's not just going to be like, yeah, man, sit down and show you what to do, da da da. Like, you probably would, but it's just not, it's not worth it. But anyway,
not worth dealing with,
like that's one of the drawbacks. And then one of the other drawbacks is it creates a margin of error. So if you don't have people follow things the way that the spec, the procedure, the checklist, and everything, if somebody forgets something, if something gets omitted, if some paint stripe gets put on and somebody gets distracted or gets pulled off and somebody assumes that's torqued, like there have been problems. You know, there are engines that have locked up on the dyno and it's like, oh shit, this fucking bearing cap wasn't bolted, like it wasn't tight. Do the failure analysis and you can see where it's been walking. Like there's some margin of error, but it's all in the fact that the dealer that I'm working at is large enough that that is just kind of accepted as being part of the operational cost in the grand scheme of product support. Oh, it's so there's a, if you get good at admin side stuff,
it's a completely different way than John Deere.
You can find where, like, they call it policy. You can find the policy accounts and look at the amount of money that's written off on policy. And it's mind-blowing